Hello everyone, my name is Dogly, and in this video I'm going to talk about the upcoming weapon and character banners in Genshin Impact. I'll give my opinions on which constellations could make the banner worth it for you, and then I'll go over my own personal summoning plans and what I'm looking for. Alright, so let's get into it. First up is the Kazuha banner, which also features the 4 stars Bennett, Razor, and Rosaria. So let's talk about these 4 stars first. Bennett is easily one of the best characters in the game, so if you don't have one already, get him. He's great, invest in him. If you already have Bennett, the value of some of his constellations can vary quite a bit based off of how you're choosing to build him and who his teammates are. His first constellation will increase the attack buff from his ultimate by 20%, which is more noticeable if he has a high base attack weapon because his buff itself works based off of his base attack. His C1 also removes the HP restrictions for this attack buff. Without C1, Bennett will not activate the attack buff if any character in his circle has less than 70% HP, but since he heals so fast, this restriction really only impacts teammates with very high HP, particularly Zhongli, Hu Tao, and Diona. Overall, Bennett's C1 is pretty good all around, but if you're using Bennett with these high HP characters, then it becomes a super important constellation to have. Bennett's second constellation increases the energy recharge that he gets. Bennett's second constellation increases his energy recharge by 30% when his HP is below 70%. It's really situational. There are some times where it's helped me out, but most of the time it's not a factor. Overall, my verdict on this constellation is it's not worth it. Bennett's third constellation will increase the level of his elemental skill by 3, which is useless for healer or pure support Bennett, but it's actually nothing to laugh at for sub DPS Bennett or for main DPS Bennett. For those few main DPS Bennett sets out there that exist, like the Thundering Fury set. Due to the recent elemental mastery buff, this has given Bennett's elemental skill a bit more oomph behind it. But unless you're fully committed to increasing Bennett's damage, then I'd probably pass on C3 as well. If you want the extra damage, it's a great one. If not, pass. C4 is just a weird constellation since it gives Bennett an additional attack during the shorter version of his charge attack. Honestly, Bennett's charge attack are really weird all around. It's very situational. I'd personally pass on C4. C5 increases Bennett's ultimate by 3 levels, and C5 is really the standard for any Bennett dreamer. I would love to have C5 on my second account for Bennett. I already do have C5 on my main account. Increasing his ultimate is just so good. C6 is a huge risk, and most of the time it's not worth it. C6 will turn all normal attacks in Bennett's circle into pyro-infused attacks. This is a hard pass unless you want a full pyro team. Up next we have Razor. In my opinion, Razor is the best 4-star physical attacking character in the game, and I've had a lot of fun playing him on my second account. That said, I do think Razor needs a fair amount of team support to use him effectively, and he himself doesn't provide good support for other characters. If you have a lot of main DPSs already built, then Razor probably is not a good character for you. Razor's C1 is actually really good as it buffs his damage by 10% for the 8 seconds after he picks up an elemental orb. His C2 is so situational it's not even worth talking about, so just pass on C2. C3 will boost the level of his ultimate skill, not his elemental skill, which is switched between a lot of other characters. I think this is a really nice place to have his elemental or his ultimate skill buff. Since Razor loves using his ultimate, having it earlier in the constellations means you get the value earlier. C4 I think is pretty good overall. It will lower the opponent's defense by 15% for 7 seconds after hitting them with your elemental press. Pretty good. It pairs nicely with his C1. Personally, I think C3 is a little bit more valuable than C4, but C4 is not a bad stopping point by any means. C5 then boosts his elemental skill level, not really worth it. You're not dealing a ton of damage with your elemental skill, you're just using it to collect energy. C6 I think is a pretty hard pass. Depending on your base attack, this will basically only let you deal 2 to 3k extra damage once every 10 seconds, which is basically nothing. I would say, if you are wanting the full Razor experience, C4 is probably where you would want to stop. Alright, so now we have Rosaria. I personally haven't played Rosaria very much, so please take my analysis of her constellations with a grain of salt, and also speed through things here to give the broad strokes instead. Rosaria herself is most useful in a supporting role since her ultimate stays on the field even when she is off the field, and then her ultimate will do continuous damage. C1 to me doesn't seem worth it since it only buffs her own attacking capabilities rather than giving her anything helpful as a support. C2 increases her ult's duration by 4 seconds, which is hugely beneficial I think. C3 boosts her elemental skill, again not useful for her. C4 I think is a bit lackluster, it basically gives her extra energy when her elemental skill crits. C5 boosts her ultimate, which I think is a really good thing. It's just I'm not sure if the extra damage is really going to add up that much in the long run. But C6 is really where it's at, and I think C6 turns Rosaria into an amazing support for characters like Eula, Razor, or Physical Kachin. Her C6 will make her ultimate decrease the enemy's physical resistance by 20% for 10 seconds. So if you somehow got C5 Rosaria before on the last banner but didn't get C6, C6 is something pretty darn amazing. Unfortunately for most players, I feel like C6 is just such a high investment. Like C2 is good, and then C6 is good, and everything else is kind of meh on Rosaria. Alright, so now that leaves us with the 5-star character, Kazuha. In my previous video, I already talked about why I'm excited for Kazuha, and the shortened version is that I don't have a Venti on my main account, and I have a lot of elemental infusion characters that will be buffed by Kazuha's passive talent. Kazuha's passive talent is set to give 0.04% extra elemental damage to his teammates for every 1 point of his elemental mastery. So that means if he has 1000 elemental mastery, he is basically giving 40% extra elemental damage bonus to his teammates. Kazuha's elemental skill will also have a decent amount of crowd control capabilities, and his ult will deal great damage in terms of skill damage, swirl damage, and elemental bonus damage. Since Sucrose and Venti both have crowd control with their ult instead of their elemental skill, I'd argue their crowd control might be better, but I think Kazuha's overall damage potential still looks quite promising, and I'm excited to test him out. If you have Venti and Sucrose on your account already, then Kazuha might not be the perfect character for you. I'm not really sure yet if I want to risk going for Kazuha constellations, but I'll briefly go over the theories for what his constellations are. Theories, wink wink. At C1, using his ultimate will cause the cooldown of his elemental skill to be reset, basically meaning that you can use his elemental, then his ult, then his elemental again. This seems like it has potential to increase his overall crowd control, but I'm uncertain to what degree that increase will be. C2 is the constellation I'm dreaming about since it increases the elemental mastery of every character within his ultimate's circle by 200. This is just so good, and I love to get lucky enough to get this constellation, but I just don't think I'm going to have enough primos sadly unless I get really lucky. C3 levels up his elemental skill, C4 seems like it'll just let Kazuha generate more energy, C5 will boost his ultimate's level, and then C6 makes it so that Kazuha's normal attacks have an Anemo infusion, which gives him high main DPS potential. Personally, I'm really excited about C2. C1 is okay in my book. C6 would be amazing. There's just absolutely no way that I could get to C6. And I think even I don't think I have a chance of getting C2 either. It's a dream, but it's kind of a pipe dream. All right, so let's move on to the weapon banner next. So, of course, we have the Freedom Sworn, the shiny new weapon, Skyward Atlas, and then Alley Flash, Alley Hunter, Wine and Song, Dragon's Bane, and Favonius Greatsword. But let's first talk about the 5-star, new 5-star Freedom Sworn. So it has 198 elemental mastery, 608 base attack, which I would actually argue is probably on the lower side for both of them. Secondary effect, it just automatically increases your damage by 10%, which I don't think is anything to laugh at. Compared to other millennial movement weapons, I think its effect is easier to trigger. So Kazuha can use his ultimate, go off the field, have the swirls trigger when he's off the field, and then automatically get the sigils onto the character who's already switched in. So I think that's a lot easier than with the Song of Broken Pines, where you needed the character holding the weapon to actually trigger the sigils themselves. Then the sigils will boost the incoming character's normal attacks by 16% and then their attack stat by 20%. Overall, fairly good sword here. It's clearly made for Kazuha. I don't think it really works very well on other characters. Let's then dive into some of these 4-star weapons as well. So here we have the Alley Hunter, low attack modifier, low attack main stat, and high base attack. But the effect is kind of just really weird. Overall, it's just a weapon that I struggle to see what characters in the game would actually use it over Stringless, over Rust, over Blackcliff, over other 4-star options. I just don't think that there's a single character that would much rather have this 4-star over any other 4-star that exists. Wine and Song kind of is the same problem. It has stats for a supporting character, but then the effect is for a main DPS, and it's like it doesn't jive well together. The Alley Flash is probably the best of these weapons. It has high base attack, a little bit of elemental mastery, but this is basically just Bennett's weapon. Kaya could maybe use it as well, but really this weapon is great for Bennett. Overall, I would say the best thing about this weapon banner is clearly the Freedom Sworn sword for Kazuha. It's not that great on other characters though, so it's a little bit of a risk. I would say that the banner isn't the worst weapon banner that I've seen, but it's not a great weapon banner either. I'd rank it like kind of meh, maybe like a slightly below weapon banner, but it's not awful, but it's not good either. Alright, so now I kind of just wanted to go over my own summoning plans here. So I have 37,000 Primogems saved up, plus 2,000 Genesis Crystals left over from the Welcome Moon, and then if you count Stardust, like I basically have enough for 275 wishes. I'm excited for Kazuha, and I'm definitely getting Kazuha within 275 wishes for sure, so I don't have to worry about that. I'm also just really nervous in terms of like how should I distribute the primos? Should I try to go for constellations on Kazuha, which is so far from guaranteed? Should I try for the Freedom Sworn? I think ultimately what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my first copy of Kazuha, and then I'm going to try once for Freedom Sworn because my weapon banner is already halfway to pity. My character banner is 0 on pity, and I have to win the 50-50, so it's a little bit of risk there. I'm still not exactly sure what I'm going to end up doing on my main account in terms of Kazuha and the sword and everything, but I think tentatively my plan is get one copy of Kazuha, try for the sword once. If I don't get the sword once, then I'll just recalculate, see how many primos I have left, and then try to see what's best for me at that point. If I could get C2 Kazuha, that would just be so amazing. The extra 200 elemental mastery buff from that kind of outperforms the 198 elemental mastery from the sword. So it's a little bit of a gamble, but I'll kind of play it by ear and see how it goes. I think that on my second account, I also really need to pay attention to Bennett and Razor constellations. Bennett and Razor are really my two main damage dealing characters on my second account, and being able to get constellations for them could be really nice. If I could get C3 on Razor, I'd be happy. C4 would be great. On Bennett, I think C3 is probably what my goal is. C5 is the dream. I realistically don't have enough primos for that. I think that I have about 10,000 primos on my second account, and I just don't know when I'm going to get another chance to summon for Razor and Bennett on the same banner. So I think it's safe for me to spend a little bit of primos there. I'm not seeing a lot of characters from 1.7 that I'm wanting to summon on, so that's part of the reason why I'm willing to kind of go all out here on both of these accounts. But I'm excited to see what happens. I'm excited to play with Kazuha, to test him out and to let you guys know how he works for me. Please comment down below what you guys think about these banners, what your summoning plans are, how many Prima Gems you have saved up, and I wish you guys all the best of luck in your own summonings. If you found this video helpful, please leave a like, comment down below, and I'll see you guys later. Bye!